On February 20, 2026, the Supreme Court held in a 6-3 decision that the tariffs President Trump imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act are unlawful. The man who built his entire second-term economic agenda on the most sweeping tariff regime since the Great Depression watched his own Supreme Court, a court that includes 3 justices he personally nominated and confirmed, strip away the legal foundation of his signature economic policy in a single ruling. And that was just the first blow. Because the Supreme Court is not done with Donald Trump, not even close. Before the end of June, the same court that just gutted his tariff authority is expected to deliver a ruling on his executive order ending birthright citizenship. A ruling that a majority of the justices telegraphed during oral arguments they are almost certainly going to decide against him. Add the Court of International Trade piling on with a second tariff ruling just weeks later, plus massive pending decisions on his ability to fire independent agency heads, and you have the most significant legal reversal of any presidential second term in modern American history, all dropping in the months immediately before a midterm election that will decide whether Republicans hold Congress. Let's go through every piece of this: the tariff ruling, the birthright citizenship case, the fallout, the refunds, the political damage, and why what happens at the Supreme Court between now and July could reshape the entire second half of Trump's presidency. Start with the tariff ruling because its scale is almost impossible to fully absorb. On February 20, 2026, the Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision in Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump that IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. The majority opinion was written by Chief Justice Robert Roberts, a man Trump praised effusively after the presidential immunity ruling in 2024. A man Trump told at a White House ceremony within earshot of cameras that he would not forget the favor. Roberts wrote the opinion anyway. He was joined by Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Jackson. The 6-3 decision was based on an analysis that taxation is clearly the authority of Congress, that IEEPA does not mention the word tariffs, and that no previous president has ever used IEEPA to impose tariffs. That last point matters enormously. The court was not making a close call on a contested legal question. It was pointing at the text of a statute, pointing at 47 years of presidential practice since IEEPA was passed in 1977, during which 0 presidents ever used it for tariffs, and saying this has never been legal and you have been doing it illegally for over a year. The ruling means that President Trump's IEEPA tariffs, including the Liberation Day tariffs, are illegal. The Tax Foundation estimated those tariffs had raised more than $160 billion for the federal government through the date of the ruling, and would have raised $1.4 trillion from 2026 through 2035. That revenue is gone. It will not be collected. And the door is now open to something even more financially catastrophic for the government. For businesses that have paid tariffs imposed under IEEPA, the ruling opens the door to potential refunds, though the path to recovering those payments remains uncertain. The Penn-Wharton budget model estimated IEEPA-based tariff collections total approximately $175 to $179 billion. If those refunds are ultimately ordered, the United States government faces one of the largest single-year financial obligations in its history, paying back nearly $180 billion to businesses that overpaid tariffs that were collected illegally. In one of the most consequential decisions in modern U.S. Supreme Court history, the court ruled that President Donald Trump lacked the legal authority to impose tariffs on all countries and on all merchandise for any stated reason. The Brookings Institution described it as removing the fastest tool for imposing broad country-level duties. The Council on Foreign Relations noted it hobbles Trump's ability to use tariff threats to leverage concessions on non-trade matters, the very strategy he used to negotiate with China, Mexico, Canada, and dozens of other countries throughout his first and second terms. Clearly angered by the court's decision, Trump described the verdict as deeply disappointing and accused some justices of lacking courage. Within hours, Trump announced on Truth Social that he would immediately increase a new tariff to 15% for all countries under a different law, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. But Section 122 comes with significant constraints that IEEPA did not. Under Section 122, a president can impose up to 15% tariffs for only 150 days by citing a balance of payments crisis. 150 days, not permanent, not open-ended, not the sweeping instrument IEEPA provided. The tariff wall is still standing, but it is shorter, time-limited, and subject to further legal challenge. And then, in May, a specialized federal court in New York delivered a new blow, ruling against the tariffs the president imposed after the Supreme Court decision, the very replacement tariffs Trump scrambled to put in place within hours of the IEEPA ruling. Two courts, two losses, the same trade agenda getting knocked down twice in 3 months. Now here is where the Supreme Court's damage to Trump's agenda goes from significant to potentially historic, because the tariff ruling was only the first domino. The Birthright Citizenship case is next, and the stakes are even higher. On January 20, 2025, his first day back in the White House, Trump signed an executive order directing federal agencies to refuse to recognize U.S. citizenship for children born in the United States to parents who are here illegally or on temporary visas, if neither parent is a citizen or permanent resident. The question before the Supreme Court is whether that executive order violates the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment and a provision of federal law. The 14th Amendment language has been settled for over 125 years. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. A Supreme Court ruling in 1898, Wong Kim Ark, explicitly confirmed that this applies to children born to foreign parents. Courts have uniformly blocked the Trump administration from implementing the executive order. Every single federal judge who has considered it has found it unconstitutional. Not a split, not a close call. Every judge. After just over 2 hours of oral arguments on April 1, before an audience that included Trump himself, a majority of the Supreme Court seemed likely to rule against the administration. SCOTUS blog, the most authoritative Supreme Court analyst in the country, reported that a majority appeared poised to invalidate the order. A decision is expected by the end of June or early July. If the High Court rules against the Trump administration, it would mark the second major loss for the president in his second term. But it would be more than just a legal loss. It would be a constitutional rebuke, because the Birthright Citizenship Order is not a tariff policy or an economic emergency declaration. It is an attempt to reinterpret a constitutional amendment that has been settled law for 158 years. If the Supreme Court, Trump's Supreme Court, 3 of whose justices he appointed, rules that the order is unconstitutional, it will be the court telling the president he tried to erase a right that is literally written into the founding document of the United States. The Supreme Court has a long history of waiting until a president has lost some of his post-election power and popularity before delivering major legal losses. NBC News noted this pattern explicitly. The court avoided direct confrontations with Trump throughout 2025, handed him a series of wins, and pushed rulings on contentious policies into 2026. And 2026 is a midterm election year. A birthright citizenship ruling against Trump dropping in June or early July, just 4 to 5 months before November, lands at the worst possible political moment for Republicans defending thin majorities in the House and Senate. Now, here's the argument Trump supporters and Republicans make in response to all of this, and it is worth taking seriously. They argue the Supreme Court's tariff ruling is a prime example of judicial overreach, that IEEPA was always designed to give the president broad emergency powers, that previous administrations used it aggressively in other contexts, and that the court substituted its own economic and trade policy preferences for the elected president's. They argue that birthright citizenship has never been definitively settled by the Supreme Court on its merits, that Wong Kim Ark addressed a specific case, that the 14th Amendment's phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, has always been subject to legitimate interpretive debate, and that Trump is entitled to have the court engage with that debate, rather than reflexively blogging him on procedural grounds. They also argue that Trump immediately found alternative legal tools after the tariff ruling, Section 122, Section 232, Section 301, Section 338, and that the practical impact on his trade agenda, while significant, is not fatal. The tariffs did not disappear overnight. Other statutory authorities remain in play, and the administration is pursuing investigations to impose additional tariffs under other provisions. Trump himself said the court cannot stop him from protecting America from unfair trade, and his base heard that message and agreed. But here's the political reality that Republican strategists are staring at heading into November. Most legal experts expect the court to rule against Trump on birthright citizenship, and the decision will come just months before the midterm elections that will put the president into lame duck territory. A president whose tariff authority has been gutted, whose inflation numbers are at 24% approval, whose gas prices are above $5 in 7 states, whose Senate Republicans revolted and missed his own June 1 deadline, whose anti-weaponization fund is being sued in federal court by Capitol Police officers, that president is now also likely to be told by his own Supreme Court that his most high-profile immigration executive order is unconstitutional before November. The cumulative political weight of that picture is what should be keeping Republican House members and Senate candidates up at night, because midterm elections are referendums on the sitting president. They are decided by independent voters who look at the general direction of the country and decide whether it is on the right track. Right now, inflation is up, gas prices are up, the courts are blocking the president's agenda, his own senators are revolting, and the Supreme Court of the United States, including justices he chose, is handing him the most significant legal defeats of his presidency at the most politically sensitive moment possible. And here's the debate that every American should be having. The Supreme Court is supposed to be independent of politics. Its job is to say what the law is, not what is politically convenient for whoever is in the White House. When the court rules 6-3 that a presidential tariff regime is illegal, with the 3 Trump-appointed justices split, Gorsuch joining the majority, Barrett joining, Kavanaugh dissenting, that is not a politically motivated attack. That is the court doing its job. But here's the harder question. Is a Supreme Court that consistently blocks a president's agenda on the eve of a midterm election exercising judicial independence, or is it exercising a kind of institutional power that is itself political, just dressed in constitutional language? And if the birthright citizenship ruling comes down in June and Republicans lose the House in November, do you credit the court with defending the Constitution, or do you blame it for handing Democrats the midterms? Drop your answer below.